But we also need to consider, as the next wave of founders, that our paths to commercialization and the big opportunity may lie outside our borders.
I'm curious about if you run into students that have really forward-thinking, innovative ideas, but they may have certain obstacles that are native to us and not perhaps outside. So as an example, open banking has been a hot topic in the tech finance world because we don't have the same rules that perhaps some of other peers do. We're trying to grow fintech and those types of companies greatly here as a country, and yet we're faced with regulatory objections that aren't allow us to go as fast. Same thing can be applied to blockchain. There's a lot of restrictions so far that we may have here that even other provinces may not have outside of Ontario, let alone other countries. So my question to you, do you run into students that have really great ideas, but they're struggling of how they're going to execute them, and they're fearful that it's preventing them from being on par with our peers outside of Canada? And if you do run into that, like, what do you tell them?
It's a very fair question, and definitely there are areas where people run into that. There's probably like 1,000 different answers to 1,000 different scenarios that founders are facing with that same question you've asked. So I'll try not to give like one answer as if it's the answer to everything, but I'll give you an example of something. One of the companies that I invested in at a founding stage a while back was in the financial services sector and providing a marketing automation platform. They were set up here, built the company, selling to Canadian financial institutions, and then just realized that the speed at which those institutions were willing to change and move and do something different was such that it would take them 2.5 years to 3 years of like conversations and pilots and testing and proving, and until they could get to the point where they got a small check, the small first check. And then one day they went to sell and take their solution globally. And in the span of like 60 days, did more contracts than they had done in 3 years in Canada. One thing we have to understand, which might be like a hard thing for people to get their heads around, but I think is very important, is that then there will be exceptions to this rule. But I think that Toronto and Canada are an exceptional place to build, pilot, test, learn, gather talent, gather, opening early stage funding support, and have like incredible insights into the product and what you're building and all those things. I love Toronto. I love Canada. I love the ecosystem. But we also need to consider, as the next wave of founders, that our paths to commercialization and the big opportunity may lie outside our borders, and that we should think more globally, and we should not get stuck in terms of like thinking that our ultimate market is Canada, because we do have a whole bunch of obstacles, not only regulatory, but also that there's like so many companies that represent like major potential implementations for our technologies in the country, but in fact they are extended operations of American corporations, right? Who dictate IT policy or control procurement, right? So that you might get pilots done in Canada, but then once it's successful, then you might have an American parent company say, that's interesting. I bet we could find a company that could do that in the States. So you have to be really careful not to become over fixated as if Canada is the ultimate market. And I've learned that at different stages in my life, both like, things that I could have done differently earlier with my own business, but also observing people who did it really well and realized when the moment came to like leverage everything that they'd learned inside the border and then to go take it to the world as aggressively as possible.